what's new. That's always seemed like.
Not much, right? We're just. Are you serious? What's new?
I really enjoyed listening to Tusk. I think Sharon told you to the new album.
Yeah, you got to hear that the other night. Huh?
Yeah, in its entirety.
Oh, good. Would you manage to sit through all 4 sides without taking a break, an ear break? It's just a lot to listen to all at once.
It is too much to hear at once, and probably not hearing it in one's home is a difference too.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember reading a couple years ago, Mick was saying, gee, it would be nice if we could do a double album.
Mm-hmm.
And that we would only do it if there was no filler and it could be a conceptual thing. So it really started out always being a double album.
Well, that was something that we wanted to shoot for a long time, and I think if we had maintained. It's funny because within the 5 members of the group, there's a very intricate sense of checks and balances and creative values, and I think that whereas a single artist might lose his objectivity because there's so much ego from all 5 members, that if in fact we had started out to do a double album and then sort of, maybe not had enough material to do it, that we would have cut back to a single album. So there was always the intention to do the double album, and it just went. We spent less money, or about the same amount of money, on this album that we did on Rumors, which is a good chunk of money. There's no getting around that. But it took, in terms of studio time, about the same amount of time as Rumors too, and so there was never really that much of a worry about not being able to achieve what we set out to achieve. We started out for that point, and it just sort of arrived a year and some odd months later.
It must be really rewarding when you have 3 writers to be able to do 20 songs instead of be limited.
Yeah, that's one thing that made, when we first started doing this, I was doing a lot of listening to the Beatles' White Album, because I love that album. That album shows so much, and we really, we wanted to start out, we wanted to do a lot of sort of more fringy sort of things, if you know what I mean. You sort of have to. With a single album, you can come out with sort of a bulk work, and you don't have to expose yourself as much. None of the writers really have to expose themselves as much as they would, say, with 7 songs. 3 songs, it's sort of a slice of something. It's like looking through, the opening in a fence or something. It's just seeing part of what an entire thing can be. But it's great. 3 writers. I mean, you get the Beatles album. There's so much variety. I always thought that John Lennon must have been very embarrassed. I mean, the variety, going from something like something Your Blues, or something that Lennon was expressing his sort of fringier sort of things at that time, and then into Obla D. I mean, those are such divergent sort of approaches to music that looking back on it now and imagining, having experienced some, conflicts within writers, not anything serious, but I mean, conflict makes for good art, hopefully. The listener, I mean, that's what makes that album great, is that there is so much. There is not that sort of diversity in this album. It is more of a uniform thing. There isn't as much joking around. It's still a very emotional sort of presentation, I hope. But the fact that Lennon could get embarrassed about a song of McCartney's, or maybe get enraged about it, and still have it go on the album is great, and that's what made that album so great. So
Well, I thought there was, especially when your songs came on, I found myself laughing. The kind of way that, you laugh and you have a great surprise.
Yeah, well,
like
yes.
How clever, how witty.
I'm sure that it's going to be somewhat of a shock to a few people.
Certainly in terms of sequencing, a nice ballad, and all of a sudden, thud.
Slap across the face, yeah. Wake up!
Well, so I wasn't too far off. My initial reaction when listening to it was that Tusk is the White Album of the '80s, and
Well,
Lindsey is John Lennon on this album?
I don't know. I can't make those kind of comparisons at all. I wouldn't even begin to try to.
In terms of feel, and not in terms of
fit.
a comparison, but in terms
Right.
of what you were saying.
Oh, I don't know. I can't say that this album is the White Album of the '80s or anything like that. No, I didn't. I wasn't thinking in those terms as much as.
How about Spirit?
Spirit, certainly in spirit, I would think. I mean, you're saying wake up. I mean, people do need to be awakened slightly from the doldrums, and that's a lot of the new music that's coming out is certainly doing that as well. But, we've gotten to do some things on this album. I certainly have gotten to do quite a few things on this album that I've been wanting to try for several years.
What sort of thing?
Well, just the approaches to the music, having a tape machine at my house. Right before we started the album, I'd done lots and lots of thinking about this, and I talked to Mick about it, and we eventually came to an understanding that I would do some of the work of my tunes at home, which I have done, and just the level of involvement, for me anyway.
Were you sort of producer of this in a way?
I guess in a way, yeah. I mean, I probably. Hi there. I probably. It's funny. The term producer is such a vague thing. It's more you get as much credit as you can make someone give you. And that's not in terms of the band, but I know there are producers, people who have been called producers of records over the years, who have done nothing more than sit in the studio and drink beer and kind of nod their head once in a while. And then there are other people like Brian Wilson who have, there is no difference between the music and the person, it is all one thing, and that's it. And the level of involvement on every single level is complete, and various shades in between, the work that I did with Walter Egan as producer certainly wasn't as, both that particular album, we were working on Rumors at the time, but my involvement with that certainly wasn't nearly as complete as my work or overall influence on the Tusk album was. So, I don't know.
Then it was John Stewart.
John Stewart, yeah, that was a good thing. That was a different situation because John's lawyer had contacted my lawyer and said,
Sounds like have your service call my service.
right, exactly, and they were the record company that he's with, RSO, was trying to approach the whole thing on a total business level, trying to procure my services as a producer, and we were in the middle of doing Tusk at that time, and I had not met John Stewart, but I have about 20 old Kingston Trio albums at home, which people don't like to admit very often. They do. But he came over to my house and we met, and I said, look, John, I cannot come in and produce this album for you because to do that it requires much more involvement than I really can give you right now. But I'll do whatever I can, especially in the initial stages. So I was going over to his house up in Malibu for about 3 weeks, all the material and just getting arrangements and basically laying the groundwork for his album, choosing the songs, choosing the kind of attitude that they'd have and stuff like that. And my involvement in the studio was very minimal. I went in and played, on a few things and sang, and that was about it. That consists of about 3 days or 4 days of work in the studio, So that's the credit on that. The producer at large was sort of ironic. They had an album out years ago called Kingston Trio at Large, and there was sort of a play on the words. And he, so the whole thing with John Stewart was not. It was more a very fair exchange of energy between someone who had given me some energy years ago, and I was able to give it back to him, and it was not on a business level. And the production, I didn't produce in the studio on that album, so.
Did you ever think you would become a producer?
Yeah, I've been wanting to do that for years. I started off in about 1970 I was able to get enough money together to get one of those old Ampex 4-tracks, the big ones in the consoles with the big stack of things, which they still use, are still being used for a lot of things, and those are good machines. And I got a room about this size up in a warehouse in Daly City at my father's coffee warehouse up there in Northern California. And drove up there from San Jose, where I was living at the time, every night and worked on songs by, the quote, McCartney, I suppose. McCartney was the first person to come up with an album that was played all by him. And,
one-man band, sort of.
right, yes. And that was something that I had been very, very intrigued by for years anyway, so I started doing that with my songs and with Stevie's songs. And that eventually, after years of sort of getting that craft together a little bit, led to moving down here. And so I've been into that end of it for just years and years, and a very intimate relationship with a tape machine. But not in the sense that a lot of producers get into it, as far as relying on the technology that the studio, the current state of the art of the studio, which is sort of, doesn't mean very much to me anyway.
Though you did play around with this. This was a digital mix down.
Yes, that's a very valid thing. When I say state of the art, I simply mean the number of people that usually are involved between a seed of an idea and what finally goes on tape in the studio, and the number of pieces of equipment that are involved, and the number of steps that are involved. It's almost like a certain studio etiquette, not necessarily with Fleetwood Mac, but just in general, the whole thing with a producer who has a group of studio musicians that he always brings in, that he's comfortable working with, and that musicians come in and they're very comfortable, working in that situation, and they will play parts that are safe and will cover what is needed for them, and that's all, and they'll get their checks and they'll leave, and the emotional involvement, the passion is totally lacking, and that is, it has to do with the whole thing. When I work at home, I have no console. I have a 24-track machine and a very small thing, one microphone, do everything with miking techniques. It's in a room about this size, instruments all over the place. There's a bathroom across the hall, which I use, which has great bathroom sounds. And it's like doing a painting or something. It's just much more, you're just emoting. I don't know if that's a word or not, but you just get lost in it for hours and hours on end and don't want to stop. And it's the momentum that's involved and the level of love in doing something that's involved is totally different than what usually is. Not necessarily all the time, but what most of the time I've observed in going on in studios, regular studios in Los Angeles.
I should imagine the recording at home is a test of ingenuity, in the sense that without all those toys you'll find in the studio, you have to make them up as you go along. You mentioned your bathroom, for example.
Yeah. It's that's true. I mean, you don't have the crutches or whatever you want to call them. You don't have a limiter there. You don't have all these. You don't have EQ to change the sound. So you have to go for something that's much more central to what the center of any idea is, rather than saying, okay, well, we're just going to layer all of these things. These instruments don't particularly fit together that well, but we'll play with the EQ and we'll fashion them around each other. You have to have it right from the beginning, or it's not going to work. And that's, Les Paul used to do that. In fact, I think I read an article where he was saying that he thought the best thing anyone could do would be to just scale the whole damn thing down to just basics and start over again, because you really have to think then, and thinking is something that isn't done a lot in the studios. It's all a formula, It's strange.
I wanted to ask you about the voices on this album.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the harmonies and the way they're used. I was always a big fan of what Duke Ellington used to use. I used to use voices as instruments in a way.
I haven't heard that much Duke Ellington, to be honest with you, my ignorance, but yes.
But I felt that voices and harmonies were being used in the same way, not just as sweetening, but as almost as instruments. Is that fair to say?
It would be easier for me if we were talking specific songs, and you probably only heard the album like once, right? And there's 20 songs, they go by like that. But let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably true. There's a song of Stevie's on the end of side one called Sarah, which, in fact, there's very many songs like that where it isn't the obvious Fleetwood Mac blend, you know, which was, people have heard the Fleetwood Mac blend. There's a lot of people who sing nice three-part harmonies, and I thought it was important that we use things in a different context this time, you know, because people need to hear things new. Yes, you're right. I think on Sarah, the song of Stevie's, the voices come in as something that you're not even aware of until they've already built the song up. You don't realize that the song is welling up or why, and then all of a sudden you become aware that there's a chorus of things swelling up behind, you know, the central focus of the song. I think that's probably true on a number of tunes. The vocals are not mixed loudly. The tracks, they're supportive of the tempos, the groove of the song, I think. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but I think that's probably true, yes.
Sort of a subliminal effect.
Yeah.
It was really nice. And to me, it was a major departure in the sound of the music.
For that reason, you mean, or just?
It certainly was a big factor. This is only one listening.
Uh-huh. I'm going over all the songs on my mind. Well, I think in general, I know when we started out on my songs, I was trying my damnedest not to put the standard three-part harmonies on and make them a real blocky thing, you know, so maybe that idea, I hadn't really thought about it as far as Christine's songs or, you know, just as far as the whole album goes, but now that you mention it, I suppose that that sort of got, that idea filtered down into the mix downs of all the mixes to some degree, yeah, just having them back a little bit.
Let's talk about your songs. Your songs are pretty much kind of fun.
Oh, that's good.
On this record, and they definitely aren't probably what people would expect.
I don't think they are, no. Like the single. The single is certainly not representative of the album. It is in one way, but it's one of the more extreme things on the album, I'd say. So, you know, with the single as well as with the album, I'm sure people are going to be listening to it a few times, going, "Oh my God." And hopefully after a couple of listenings, you know, it's gonna make a lot more sense. Not that it doesn't the first time, but no, it isn't what people are gonna be expecting at all.
Do you think it would help if people heard the Ledge before they heard Tusk?
Oh, well,
Aha!
I mean, that's why the Ledge is where it is on the album, certainly. I mean, Tusk, we had sort of second thoughts about releasing a single at all before the album, you know, because the sequencing of the album is such that by the time you get to the end, Tusk seems to make a lot more sense in the context of the whole thing, and Tusk, just out there on its own, is funny, but it is funny. That's what it's for, you know, and people do like it after a while. So, no, I don't think it's necessarily going to help people. The fact that Tusk is a single may take away from its effect at the end of the album by the time, you know, as far as sort of being the big puka or the big wrap up or something towards the end of the album. But
I figured that Tusk was released as a single as a calling card for the album to let people know that this was not, you know, Rumors Goes Hawaiian.
Right.
Son of Rumors or whatever.
Uh-huh. Rumors Goes Hawaiian. Wait a minute, what does that mean?
Well, you know what I mean. It wouldn't be a duplicate of previous material that was...
Well, yeah. I think there was a natural sort of connection for Warner Brothers too, because the song was titled the same as the album, and it's to me more than a piece of music. It just represents an excitement from the band and an attitude. It's as you said, it's a calling card. It's a heralding of what is coming. Hopefully, you know, without putting too much schmaltz into the word heralding. It's just, it is. It's saying, hey, look at this is what's happening. Pretty soon it's coming.
Yeah, well, trumpeting elephants can definitely be a herald.
Yeah.
You recorded this at Dodger Stadium with the USC marching band?
Not the whole track, just the horns. The track itself was done in the studio. It's funny, the riff, the guitar riff, the ding, 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 was something we used to open up with on stage about 2 years ago, just a riff that had been floating around in my head for quite a while. So I don't know how it got made into the arrangement that it did, because there is no arrangement. There's no logical, repetitious form or anything to that song. But Mick had the brainstorm of taking what we had at that time, which was the song that I had written, more or less the song, if you want to call it that, to that riff. And, we futzed around with it in the studio for a while, and cutting it different ways to see what way was the most confusing or whatever. Ended up with what we had. And Mick said, well, we got to put something weird on this, so he called up this man whose name is Art Bartner, who's, I guess, the head of, the guy who does the scoring and is the conductor for the USC marching band, and got him out to listen to it, and he was going, what is this, too? But eventually, he came up with the score, and we had a mobile truck out there, and it was quite a scene. She was talking about how I got lost going out there, and I'd only had about 2 hours sleep that day, and it was a surreal enough event anyway. But walking into Dodger Stadium, completely empty, and seeing 150 uniformed young people filing in, going, just totally strident and totally into it. It was incredible.
Did you film it?
Yes, it's been documented by a gentleman named Tom Spain from New York. We're in the process of putting together a film, which includes that and some live stuff, and a bunch of stuff from the studio that Tom came out to film. And it's being put together right now. Hopefully it should be on television. We're trying to sell it to a network, but not yet, sometime after the album's released. So if indeed that eventually gets on the air, there will be some great footage of the marching band in Dodger Stadium. It was incredible. And the poor guy, Art Bartner, he had to wear headsets and listen to the track as it was, and try to conduct these guys to what he was hearing, and they weren't, which is not an easy task either. That took a while. But eventually it got on.
I'm amazed they all showed up in their uniforms. I guess they can't play out of uniform.
Well, these guys are 19, 20 years old. They're young energy. They're just crazed. They loved it.
I'm sure they'll play at every USC Trojan game.
I'm sure.
Many times. Can we zip back into your childhood and figure out how you got into this room?
Surely.
You turn back the hands of time?
Yes.
Are you a native of the Bay Area?
Yes, I was raised in Atherton, which is a nice community, at the lower end of the bay, right around Palo Alto up there.
I just drove through it on Wednesday.
Through Palo Alto?
Through Atherton, yeah.
You did?
I think it was. I saw a sign that said Atherton on the freeway.
Off of El Camino or something?
Yeah.
Were you driving? Yeah, that's it. Yes, nice stable families, lived in the same place my whole life. I started playing guitar when I was about 7. And my oldest brother, I have two brothers, and my older brother, Jeff, came home one day and said, hey, there's this new guy, Elvis Presley. And at that time I was about 6, I guess, or 7. I couldn't visualize what he was talking about because he had seen pictures of him, and he put on the single Heartbreak Hotel, and that was it. He has a great 45s collection.
I heard that he has the virtual history of rock and roll.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure it's been exaggerated down the line a little bit, but they used to have these things called amophiles, which were cardboard little square suitcases, things that held about 75 records each, 45s, and you could file them. And I think he's got probably about 4 of those full. And but the thing is, he had great taste, and he bought everything that ended up being a classic later on. So he has all the great Chuck Berry and all the Little Richard and all the Everly Brothers and all the Elvis and all the stuff that was on Sun Records, all the the Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins, and you know, so that that
But
was.
you're the one who turned out to be a musician.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great way to start. It was very lucky to be so strongly influenced by that kind of music that early.
Did you go straight to electric, or did you start with acoustic?
No, I played acoustic for years, and then, as I said before, I got sort of sidetracked when rock and roll sort of lost its real interest, you know, or '61 or something, and it started to fall off in terms '60, I'd say, in terms of real strong material and strong performance and strong just everything about it. It started to lose its magic, and I got influenced by a lot of folk stuff after that, which still is evident in the way I play. I don't use a pick or anything like that. And then
You're in a great area to hear folk. Did you, for instance, sneak into the Hungry Eye or the Purple Onion? Was Purple Onion there?
yes, but I was too young, you see. I did see the Kingston Trio once at the Hungry Eye, but it wasn't even the original Hungry Eye. See, all of that was going on. I was 10 years old, 11 years old, so no, that was a great area for a lot of intellectualism. You know, San Francisco during the late 50s, early 60s was definitely happening.
State Lights books. The whole thing. Did you guys see some of your idols, or?
No, I didn't really. I didn't really see that many people. No, I didn't. It was just all from records, things like that.
Did you put bands together, folk groups?
Not really. It was a very singular, solitary thing. Starting to play at a young age, and at that time, perhaps the reason that I didn't share it was because when you play guitar at 7, there's no one else around, you know, to really get a group together with. So, no, I just learned and listened and played until I was about 18.
It must be hard to find out if you're any good when you're playing well.
Well, that wasn't an issue at that point. I just did it because I loved to do it, and I think I probably was playing very well, very, very well at that for that age without really even knowing it or even caring, you know. And it was not a competitive thing. It was not because I really didn't think until I was about 18. I think subconsciously I was preparing for a career, but you know, I don't think I really thought seriously about being an entertainer until I joined a rock and roll band, which was when I was 18, when I got out of high school. And at that time, I started playing bass because I was playing very melodic, sort of orchestral stuff, and I was not playing, you know, the kind of lead stuff. So I started playing bass, and they got a guy to play guitar, and Stevie joined that band very soon after
Was that
its
Fritz?
formation. Yes, and you asked if I'd been in groups. That's the only group before Fleetwood Mac that I'd been in. So it was a very solitary growing up with music, and then switching over to bass was probably good. It gave me a good foundation on the roots, the root notes, and things like that. It was not a hard thing to play because I was playing that thing with my thumb anyway on guitar. So that went on until '71, and that sort of brings it back up to the time when I got the tape machine, and Stevie and I split off from the group Fritz and started working on our own sort of presentation.
Buckingham mix.
Yes.
You came to LA, right, looking for a deal.
Yeah, I spent about a year and a half working on tapes up in the warehouse, and we had about 6, 7 songs that we thought were viable. And, you know, you have a very simplistic view of what it means to hit it big or to make it in the business at that time. A record deal and getting a record out was what we thought it took, and we didn't realize that 90% of the groups that have a single record out are just write-offs or whatever, you know. I mean, that's just the way the business is. So we moved down to Los Angeles and stayed in the house of Keith Olsen, who is the producer of that album, or so-called producer, and just hung out for about a year and a half until we got a record deal somehow. I don't know how we got it, really, but we did, and we put out that one album and didn't get any promotion or anything, you know. So that was just a typical story. A lot of people that I know have been through that. That's just one cycle to go through, I think.
I heard a story that the Buckingham next single did very well in the South, strangely enough, and that when you and Stevie went out to, what was it, Birmingham, that you were treated like gods, and
Something like that, yes, which is ironic because we'd already left. We didn't find that out even until we'd left the group to join Fleetwood Mac. It was very disheartening. Even before that, there was a gentleman from Texas who was hearing the single Don't Let Me Down Again in Texas, and he thought that we were biggies, you know, just from the airplay it was getting in Texas. And I'm sure that it wasn't because of promo men going in pushing it. I mean, the single got out to the stations, and that was it. And he couldn't believe it when he came back to L.A. And he was, you know, it was like shattering for him to realize that we were just starving over here. And the single was like, you know, really big in Texas at that time, apparently. Yes, and as far as the South goes, I mean, it's totally ridiculous. We got put on one small tour, if you want to call it that, but it was like a coffee house sort of tour. We played in the East. We played at a place called Passim's in Boston, and these places where they didn't even want to see an amplifier. And where was the place? Somewhere. We played at the Metro in New York, which was in Greenwich Village. And Steve Martin actually was on that show too, if you can believe that. But they didn't bother to find out where the single was doing well or where the album was doing well. That's how together the record company was at that time. You know, they just were not into the album. And if they had bothered to find out, they could have put us on the road with somebody in the South, which they didn't really get around to doing. And what was it? What actually happened? I think we were actually off the label by the time we played South. And it was a shock. The first time we went there, we were opening for Poco. And people were just going crazy for us. We couldn't figure out why. The next time we went back was with Mountain, and it was better still. And then the third time, we headlined in like a 6,000-seat auditorium and sold the place out or something. Very weird. You know, especially you come back to LA and everyone's going, who? And yeah.
Did you have some odd jobs during this time? Did I read that you were an ad man? Or?
Yeah, not really. I tried to work as little as possible. I was working downstairs on the tape machine, but I did. Yeah, that was very embarrassing too, because as you can tell, I'm pretty soft-spoken and everything, and I got this job trying to sell advertising space in a sort of a business directory, I suppose, is what it was. And
a phone room.
Yes, and so you know, I'd have to get up at 5 in the morning to call back east, right, and catch people right before lunch. And hi, this is, and you'd give a fake name, and you'd give the name of the directory, and you'd say, would you like to renew this year? And half the people would say, oh sure, if we had it last year, and you'd write them down. And but the thing, there had not been a directory the year before, so it was such a scam. I couldn't really, and you know, I couldn't take that for more than about a month. I just got too traumatized. And there were these guys in there who were just so good at it. You know, it was incredible. But I just wasn't cut out for that kind of thing at all.
I had to do that once. It really is. It's humiliating. In a sense.
It is, yeah. I mean, you have to be pretty unscrupulous to be able to do that without having it bother you. And I thought I was doing well for a while, but then the actual test is, even people who say they're going to go for it, you send the thing out and it's, you know, and unless you get the check back, it doesn't mean anything. I think I sold about 3 spaces during the time I was there.
This fabulous business directory.
Yes.
Indeed. Well, fortunately, Mick Fleetwood heard your tapes.
Yes, fate. It's always a case of that. It seems like something very simple happens and makes such a big difference. Something that it is never that you suddenly become something, and that means you're ready for the big time. It's always some strange turn of events, and then suddenly people start seeing you differently, and that seems to be, from my point of view, what happened. And Mick was looking for a studio to do the up-and-coming album. This was the album after Heroes Are Hard to Find. And someone recommended Sound City out in the valley, so he went to check it out. And the engineer, who happened to be Keith Olsen, the same gentleman whose house that Stevie and I had stayed at when we first came out to L.A., was very proud of the Buckingham Nicks album, so he, as a demonstration of his own skills, put a couple of cuts from that album on, and cranked them up over the biggies, and I guess Mick was very impressed. And he went back and told John and Christine. Didn't tell Bob, because Bob was a guitarist, but I guess things were sort of brewing. Bob had not said he was going to leave the band at that time, but apparently Mick, in his vast amount of intuition that he seems to have, he's one of the more intuitive people I've ever met in my life, he must have known something was up. And about 2 days later, Bob Welch said he was going to leave the group, and we just sort of went right in. And,
Had you been a Fleetwood Mac fan before this? Or did you get a call and say, Fleetwood who?
No, I was very aware of who Fleetwood Mac was, but I hadn't really followed. I am probably much like a great number of people who enjoyed and appreciated very much Peter Green and that whole thing, Peter and Danny, then Play On, that whole thing. I was never a big blues fan, so that wasn't. I didn't get into really purist blues things, but. The avant stuff that Peter was into, there's not anyone who doesn't like that. So I love that stuff. That album is really, really, it's got some amazing songs on it. And I hadn't followed, from about Future Games on. I really wasn't following what they were doing at all. And I wasn't as happy with, say, the Future Games format or the Bare Trees format or the Heroes as certainly as much as when Peter was in the group. But I was very aware of who they were, and
So I was wondering if this was something you jumped at, or whether you thought and hesitated for a moment.
Well, no, we did. We had to think it over because Stevie and I were still thinking that we were right in the middle of working on some new songs. We just sort of mentally put to rest the Buckingham Nicks album as a project that was not happening, and and plus realizing that you do have a lot of energy coming back to you, say in certain parts of the country. That was a very heartening sort of thing to find out. And we'd been working on 5 or 6 new tunes in the studio during off hours for about a month anyway, so it took, it wasn't right away. I don't think it took too long to decide to realize that it was a wise move. But, it took a while to sort of get ourselves we just put away a whole portion of our lives, and it was, it took a while to sort of readjust our thinking.
When two people who have been working together on a project for a long time become members of an existing band, which has its own way of doing things, and then you and your songs together, arm in arm, go into the studio to work with this band. There's got to be a period of adjustment. But from listening to the Fleetwood Mac album, it's apparent that it happened pretty smoothly.
Well, that's part of the beauty of John and Mick and Christine being able to survive so long through so many changes, is because they didn't have a rigid way of doing things, and there wasn't resistance towards new formats and things like that. I mean, I don't know if I, in Mick's position or John's position, would have been able to go from being a blues to being avant blues to being whatever, all the different, forms and people that they had in the group that they just opened themselves up to and allowed to come in and be a part of them. I mean, that's quite a thing to do, And that made it a lot easier. I think another thing that is just chemistry. I think I've learned that more in the last year. Observing different people. A lot of people don't know what they're doing, and it doesn't matter because they have chemistry, and that's it. I mean, things happen if you have the right chemistry, and you can't stop them from happening. And that's so much of it. It was incredible. I went into the studio with Jon Stewart one night, and Dave Guard, who was the gentleman that Jon Stewart replaced, came in, and the three of us were in there, and I consider myself to be pretty disciplined and pretty quick as far as being in the studio and being able to put things together and put them together rather quickly. And these guys were just sitting there kind of going for about 2 hours trying to figure out. They weren't really trying to figure out what to do. They were just in there and spacing out, and finally something just emerged. And they didn't know. The Kingston Trio didn't know what they were doing. None of them knew what they were doing. They just cared about, they had a good time singing, and the chemistry, that's it, I mean, I'm sure that's true with most popular groups that have any sort of sustaining power at all, that have any real influence or any ability to change over a period of time rather than just respond to one set of circumstances which carries them through one or two albums, the chemistry is really, really important, really important.
The contributions that you made on the Fleetwood Mac album, beginning of the Fleetwood Mac album, definitely helped finally get Fleetwood Mac over, the hump and become extremely large.
Commercial.
Is it, how do I phrase this? Is it a matter of being an outside observer? Were you able to provide some input that maybe other people couldn't see? Or was it, again, the chemistry? Or was it the audience finally being ready? Was it timing? Was it the moon and the stars?
The moon was in Uranus. I don't know. Let's see. Well, you mean as far as having listened to their albums, say, the couple of albums leading up to that, and maybe being able to find things that could be improved upon? Well, I mean, that's what I can't really say. That wouldn't be fair to say, really. It's all a matter of taste. Yeah, I think that there was a certain lack of focus happening at that time for them. Mick didn't have a whole lot to play off of as a drummer, and John, therefore, was playing a lot to try to make up for there not being anything really definite happening on a lot of those tracks and things like that. I think we brought a certain amount of, as far as just the overall impact of the tracks, aside from the material or the songs themselves, which were also certainly more precise. I think the whole approach became a little more precise, which it was with Peter Green as well. I mean, he had very, very definite ideas on what should be and should not be, and they went through a period where there was no real definite idea. It just sort of happened. And I don't know if the chemistry between that group of people was that good or not. I mean, it seemed like there was a lot of things tearing.
Certainly there was a messing in... Sure. Oops. The writing, in terms that the environment with Christine's songs and your songs and Stevie's songs, it seemed like at least it was all the same band.
Yeah.
Not all the same songs.
Which it does now, probably, but at that time, yeah, I think there's a lot more common You know, we had a lot of common taste to share at that point, and there was even probably a lot of similarity in background of influences to some degree, not in blues necessarily, but you know, Christine wasn't really a blues player when she first started playing. She grew up with very melodic, probably classical influences and things like that, and Stevie and I did too in many ways, you know, before rock and roll came along. I mean, the basic sort of fundamental set of values was very similar, I think, yeah. And that was good because it gave us a very strong core on which to expand rather than a whole bunch of divergent things that we had to try to bring together. We had something that was together that we could build on, I think, you know, which we hopefully have been over the last few years.
I remember when Fleetwood Mac started winning a lot of awards on these award shows. And Fleetwood Mac would be there, and the Eagles weren't there, or Steely Dan wasn't there, and everybody would run up. It looked like everybody was amazed that it was happening, in a sense.
Well, everybody in the band?
Yeah, that this was finally, who, us? It seemed like everybody was really enjoying.
Well, yes. It's funny because when you watch those shows, first of all, well, they get good directors for those shows, but there's something about those shows that always come off so poorly, you know. I mean, for years, the Academy Award shows, any award show has been just notorious for being embarrassing to watch. And, you know, all the rock award shows were no exception. I mean, they just are. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a number of variable things that can happen in any particular situation, or the fact that probably half the stars who were there are bombed out of their mind or something. I don't know. And, you know, people missing cues and things. But, you know, when the first one of those shows that we did, I had sort of mixed feelings about even doing it at all, because I didn't want to... It seemed sort of embarrassing to put yourself in the mainstream to that degree, you know. Not that we're not in the mainstream, but you understand what I mean. I mean, it's just sort of such an established mediocrity that it wasn't, I didn't feel we fit into it necessarily. But once you get to one of those shows, and once you get past the fact that it's not coming off particularly well on television, you realize that there are really a lot of people there who care about what they're doing and are genuinely excited. And there is a sort of a sense of who me, because most entertainers are very insecure. And most entertainers do what they do to feel more secure, they're constantly redefining their own self-image, because their own self-image isn't particularly clear. And that's what makes a lot of people try so hard. And so when, you know, whether it's schmaltzy or not, when the industry turns around and says, hey, you guys are all right, you know, it really does mean something, because you're sitting in a room with, you know, 100 other people whose faces you recognize, and it is quite a thrill, the first time especially, even if it is, you know, totally establishment, and if it's geared for selling records or for whatever the motivations are for putting the show on, for, you know, for making a lot of money through manipulating stars, through showing them getting awards, you know, I mean, it's okay, you know, so you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours is okay for, if it's not taken too far, you know. I don't know if we would do another award show now or not, because it seemed like there was this last two, I don't know if it was this year, but there were so many of them for a while, it was just getting gross, you know. I mean, it was so obviously just another way to make, for Don Kirshner or somebody, sorry Don, to make X amount of bucks, you know, but still there is something very genuine about it as well.
Good when you keep Don Kirshner in cravats.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's true every time I turn on the TV, there's Fleetwood Mac running up on stage.
I know, for a while there it got pretty bad, I must say, but, you know, it's hard to know when to stop with those things. And, you know, the Rumors was a very popular album, obviously, so it's hard to know what to say. You know, do you want to be on this show and get this award? No, screw you, you know, see you later. So I'm not sure that won't be happening again if this album becomes popular as well. We're waiting to see what the general reaction is going to be.
Often when a group finally makes it big, then they make it big and they break up, or else they have a lot of pressures. And certainly the rock press really helped a lot by publishing rumors.
Yes.
From time to time. That apparently influenced the Rumors album, didn't it?
Which rumors are you talking about?
All the rumors. I mean, the ones leading up to the Rumors album. Because I believe in... There are rumors about who was breaking up with who.
Right. Well, you can't stop people from writing about things. That's part of the risk you take, or that's just part of the deal. I don't think things that were written influenced what we were doing at all. You know, the Rumors album was certainly not a conscious effort to hang out our dirty laundry at all. I mean, in the same, people have always said, well, during the Fleetwood Mac album, the first album that Stevie and I were on, people were always saying, well, God, you know, you guys are so commercial now. Did you make a commercial effort? Did you make an effort to just say, we're going to do this now, we're going to be commercial? And it's absolutely not. This is just what we did, and it came from inside, and that's it, you know? I mean, we never thought about trying to be one thing for a reason. That's just the way it is, and exactly the same on Rumors. There was never any conscious effort to, you know, to put out a musical soap opera, or whatever way you want to, whatever number of ways it was perceived.
Do you think that was an accurate perception?
What, a musical soap opera?
Yeah, do you think it was as soap opera-ish as people claimed?
No, I don't. But that's the whole point of what I'm saying. I mean, we didn't necessarily even see it that way. The fact that there are 3 writers, and the fact that Stevie and I broke up halfway through the album and had been going together for a number of years, and John and Chris were married and broke up during the middle of that album. That situation is pretty unique, I'd say. Is 4 out of 5 people in the band are, you know, in relationships, and three of the 4 people that are in the relationships are writing all the songs, you know? I mean, it's just not... there's obviously going to be... If it's not a conscious thing, there's going to be a subconscious thing. I mean, what else are you going to write about? If those things are making me feel pain at the time, then that's what's going to come out, you know? And that comes out with everybody. It's just... there's usually only one person in a band that's doing that, so you don't get this bounce-off sort of thing, and it doesn't become that obvious. And I don't think it was particularly that obvious to us that it was coming across that strongly, if it was, which I assume it was, because that's one of the main things that people remember about the album was, aside from the music and the tracks and whatever interesting musicality there was about the album, was just the fact that it was so unusual to see this kind of... emotional interplay, so obviously, you know, rising to the surface within a group of people, you know, and being that honest about their feelings, and not, you know, trying to portray something to the public and keep their private life totally separate, you know. I think, I'm not sure, but if that's what musical soap opera is.
Not a bad definition at all. How did the band stay together, though? Or is it just that everybody's mature about it, or...?
Well... I guess, I mean, there's, you know, there has been animosity at times flying around, but I think, I mean, any group has that anyway, right? So I think that there was always a sense that, you know, somewhere up here, while all of this dirt was down here somewhere, that music was certainly more important, and that what we were doing musically for people and for ourselves, really, because, you know, I mean, it's a great thing to be able to do. It's a great thing to be able to do. It makes you so happy. At times, it makes you so unhappy, too. But being able to, I think everyone realized the potential of this fivesome of people, and thinking, I still think, you know, Tusk is to me leaps and bounds beyond Rumors musically, you know, and in many ways. And I still think, like 5 years down the line, what we could be doing, you know, and the fact that we've lived up much more to some potential that we have on Tusk than on the 2 previous albums. But that doesn't mean that we've exhausted it by any means. Quite the contrary, you know. And I think that idea, the fact that the music that we were doing was the premier thing to try to preserve was always in everyone's mind, and that allowed, you know, all of the things that came out through the breaking up of people and whatever reactions and counter reactions that caused, you know, and you know, it's still sort of, the dust is still sort of settling in a very subtle way after all this time. You know, it's interesting to observe how everyone reacts to each other over a period of time, looking now as opposed to 2 years ago, and it's neat. Things are going in cycles very slowly, and that's it. I think just the caring about the music.
All this builds character anyway. So that's
Yes, that's true.
makes you a better Boy Scout.
Yeah.
It's been said, it's been observed, I think it's a lot of it's true, that a lot of the appeal for Fleetwood Mac is that the audience thinks they're just like us. You know, people can see themselves, or it's not,
Yeah.
when you see the band, it's not like seeing a bunch of pop stars, it's seeing a bunch of people on stage playing.
Well, I mean, there is a certain amount of honesty and humanness in the music. Has been, I think, even more so on this one to some degree, even though it's weirder in some ways. And as you said, it's fun. Some of my songs are certainly less what one would expect, but there's just a certain sense of humanness. You know? People respond to that in Stevie's songs a lot. And these people can feel things not only through lyrics, reading lyrics, and by the way, the lyrics are not included in this album, so good luck. No, you can understand 75% of the lyrics on the album, but just through just the atmosphere of the tracks and everything, it just, they feel a kinship to things that they have experienced and felt themselves. Because it feels real and it feels honest and it feels human. It doesn't feel
Removed?
well, not removed. I was just going to say it doesn't feel as if it were thought out to try to you know, project one thing. The same thing. It goes back to the same thing. It's come out pretty much unconsciously. What comes out without a reason. It just does because we can't help it.
It's there and it has to leave sometime. And
Yeah.
also, you've avoided a pitfall that a lot of people go through, which is writing songs that nobody can identify with, such as "My Rolls Royce is in the shop again" and "Oh, woe is me." And
Yeah.
why do I have to stay in this lousy hotel suite?
Yeah. It's not an external view of anything. It's an internal thing, you know. I mean, the New York writers are so into, like, for a long time, nothing was valid unless it was about the street or something, you know. And, you know, okay, I haven't never been to New Jersey, so I don't know what, you know. I understand what Bruce Springsteen's writing about, and I understand the validity of it, but it doesn't mean that I feel it or relate to it, and I like Bruce Springsteen's music a lot, you know. But if you... I think things... I'm not sure. Again, we'll see what happens with this album. But as far as Rumors goes, I mean, it is. That's what it was. It was just things that are everyday feelings and things that are put across in an unusual way, but still remain usual somehow.
Does it matter when you record an album like Tusk? Is it a matter of leading the audience by the hand to this next level? Do you feel like you have to
I don't know.
guide them?
Well, no, I don't think we have to guide them. I think that they want it. I think they're ready for something. I mean, I'm just sick of 90% of the stuff I hear on the radio, and I think everyone else is too. Otherwise, people would still be buying records. And why has there been the huge recession in the record industry? It's because there's hardly anything good to listen to. It's not because, okay, so what? People don't have as much money, and there's a gas shortage, so people aren't going out as much, and all those things have something to do with it. But it's not going to stop people from going into a store and buying something that they really love and want to buy, you know. And there just hasn't been anything that makes people feel, you know. So hopefully this album will put some juice back in. I think that's an indicator that people are tired of the normal sort of thing that is put out these days, you know. So I don't think we have to lead them. They aren't here. If they were still at point A and we were at point B, then they would still be buying all the records that are centered around point A, right? But they're not. So I can only assume that they're at point B or at least 3/4 of the way there, and that's why they're not buying. And they're going to run the other quarter of the way to point B when our album comes out. That's the way I'm looking at it. I hope that that's the way it is. If it isn't, you know, we'll be disappointed. But you know, everyone's just electric right now. You know, everyone in the band and everyone in the crew at rehearsals and everything is just tingling with the anticipation of this coming out. So we feel very, very strongly about it. And we feel also very strongly about the people that we made it for. We made it for ourselves. We have to make it for ourselves first. You know, we have to love it ourselves first, otherwise it doesn't mean anything. So in that sense, we're making it for ourselves. But we have a lot of faith in people in general.
You're one of those people who think of the audience as being a mindless blob of dolts, in other words.
Well, that's you know, that can be true on a certain intellectual level, but people are basically good, and people are basically going to know something that's good or bad on whether it's on a conscious or unconscious level. People know, you know, they do.
Yeah, I thought that the recession of the music business is occurring because music at one point was a central part of everybody's life.
Uh-huh.
And if music is an essential point of your life, of those same people's lives, then it's got to be the music's fault. I mean, music has life of its own, personality of its own, and invites itself into your life.
Uh-huh. And hopefully draws you in. If it has any magic to it, you will become a part of it, and it will become a part of you, you know. And if it just becomes an affront of something that you have to try to, you know, look at and try really hard to like, then, you know, I don't think it's going to have any influence. That's for sure. It's not going to sell that much either.
Well, what's next on your agenda? You're going to go on tour for the next 8 years.
Yeah.
Starting in Pocatello.
That's right. We're starting in the biggies, yeah.
It's like they used to take Broadway shows out of town at what was it, Hartford, Connecticut, and
yeah. Well, we're playing about 2 or 3 cities, I believe, that are sort of, you could use the word, you know, low key. They're not exactly booming metropolises, only because we haven't been on the road for a while and we're trying out. It's a hard thing to know what to do with a set, you know. Especially now, if this were 6 months from now, it would be a lot easier because everyone would be quite familiar with the album who would be coming to the concerts. But right now, we're going to be going out, and the album will only have been out for about 2 weeks, and the people are mostly going to want to hear older stuff, right? Because that's what I would want to hear. I'd want to hear stuff that I was familiar with. And
I'd want to hear if you could do Tusk live.
yeah, we're going to. We are, yeah. That's one of the least hassled songs that we've had for some reason. I guess just because of the groove keeps the whole thing together. That should be a great audience participation song. Hopefully, you know, you just get them out there screaming Tusk. It'd be wonderful. But because of that, it's hard to really know it's hard to gauge how much old and new to do. I mean, because we feel so strongly about this album, of course we want to, for ourselves, do a lot of new stuff, and we will do a good chunk of new stuff, but we still haven't put the actual order of the set together yet, and that's something that, you know, we wouldn't want to open at Madison Square Garden for our first show and have a few bugs to still work out, you know. This is certainly not a put down to Pocatello, I hope. They don't take it that way, but it's just, you know, we think of it, it'll be a little more intimate for the first couple of gigs.
There's been a super demand, old rock and roll radio expression, there's been a super demand in the rock press for a Fleetwood Mac live album, with the observation being made that you can never really know Fleetwood Mac without hearing the lines there's a whole different personality of the band that, unless you've heard them live, you don't know it really exists. A
Mhm.
visceral characteristic. Are you going to record this tour?
Some, yes. As far as doing a live album, certainly there was never any thought about doing a live album for the album that we ended up doing now, because, you know, Peter Frampton did his album, and after the success of that was so great that everyone and their mother was doing a live album. And there's no, unless there's a real strong feeling to want to do it, you might as well not do it. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for people to say you've never really heard Fleetwood Mac unless you've seen them live, because what goes on record, there's a whole art and a whole process involved in making a record that does not necessarily correlate note for note with what is on stage. You know, there's a lot of groups you see that'll start out playing live in clubs, and they'll get a record contract, and they'll try to do the same thing they do live on record. And more often than not, it comes across very young sounding, which is not bad in itself, which can be very, very good, because young energy is like, you can't replace that, obviously.
Like the Knack or something?
Yeah, no, the Knack did a good record, though. They did it well for the 2 weeks they spent on it, or whatever it was. It's amazing. That's a very good record. I like that. But groups who try to put all the bravado that they do on stage on a piece of vinyl, and it doesn't make for good listening. I think that you must have a sense of restraint when you record in order for it to really come across. And that doesn't mean that everyone has to play lightly. It just means that the arrangement, everything should be a little bit more uniform, and the whole thing as a whole ends up coming across very well, in my opinion. And when you get on stage, okay, you can go out there and you can play a guitar solo for 5 minutes or something, and then it's a totally different thing. And I think that that's to me, that's a positive thing. I'm not saying we won't do a double album ever, a live album, but that's not the fact that people say that you have to see Fleetwood Mac live in order to really know them is not a motivation to go out and do a live album, because they are two different things, and they should be, as far as I'm concerned.
Sometimes when I listen to a live album, I get the feeling that I'm eavesdropping on a party that's going on next door.
Yeah, we thought for a while about putting a couple of live cuts on this album, and that would have been a nice touch, but then we had enough stuff anyway, so we thought we would make it pretty uniform, which it is. We thought we were going to do a lot more sort of joking around on this, on a few things, just get a little more crazy, but it ended up being just a nice selection of 20 tunes,
You seem like a busy sort of fellow, doesn't like sitting around. Do you have...
Can't stand it.
You're going to be doing some other kinds of stuff, and after this tour is over, you're going to produce some more records for other people, right?
No, I don't think so. I think I learned a lot doing Walter Egan's album about certain things in the studio. I learned a lot about my own sense of values. It's good. You get in a group of 5 people, a microcosm, and the way you relate is always going to be relative to the other people. So when you extract yourself and put yourself in a different microcosm for a period of time, it shows up a lot of things about yourself that you would think weren't there. And working with Walter, working with John Stewart, I think were both very good learning experiences for me. I worked some on Walter Egan's first album too, Fundamental Role, but not really very much. The Not Shy thing was a very great learning experience for me. And as far as being just exclusively sitting on that side of the glass and relating to Richard the engineer, and I love doing that, but I'm not that interested in doing that now. I think I've learned what I needed to learn from those couple of projects, and I'm more interested now in, I think if I did another production project, I would not be learning, I would not be growing from it. It would just be a repetitive thing, and I would just as soon apply the knowledge I've learned to my own stuff, for a while.
I wanted to ask if you were thinking about doing your own album.
No, I didn't
Oh.
mean it like that. I just meant working on my own songs. No, I don't think so. I don't want to do a solo album. I mean, I certainly would if there was no band, but the input that I was talking about, the sense of checks and balances before, and the influence that Mick especially, because Mick has got the most incredible intuitive sense of what makes it and what doesn't. I've learned a lot from Mick. As far as having an overall picture of something. And he's, that influence is something that shouldn't be taken lightly, and I don't think that that my music would be as good, even if I am doing some of it at home, or am doing it all myself or something, that doesn't mean that I'm still not getting a lot from other people in the band, and I'm not that interested in, especially after doing this album, I feel good about, in fact, this is the first of the 3 albums that I've been involved with Fleetwood Mac that I was actually happy with my material on it and the way it came out for the first time. And I don't see any reason why all of us, and myself included, can't continue to grow in the directions we want within the format of Fleetwood Mac, So,
It seems broad enough for that.
yes, it does, and I think that people create this illusion for themselves that it's going to be a lot easier once they leave something, but then all of a sudden you lose all that love coming back to you, and all that, all of a sudden you don't have someone saying, well, that doesn't sound good. Everyone's saying, oh, that's great, and you are the figurehead of what's happening. Everything's up to you. You don't get anything back. You don't get any kind of influence, positive and negative, from anyone, which is not good.
So you get people saying, that sounds great, Lindsey, just sign this check for me.
Yeah, exactly, and there's a real unique thing happening within this 5 of people, it's almost like we've created our own little world in which we function rather well,
Let me bring this down to the, we're just making political deals.
Oh, that's okay, no, I'm...
Political deals?
Yes,
Yes.
smoke filled games. Bad magazine level. You're clean for the 80s.
Hmm?
You've gone clean for the 80s.
Oh, you talking about this? Well, I suppose I have, yeah. That's probably a pretty good way of putting it.
Allows you to move around and not be recognized.
Yeah, I've never had that problem much anyway, it seems that it's possible that I might have it more than I ever did after this album comes out, but...
I just thought I'd tell you it's 2:30, so...
Well,
I
we're
don't
not
know when
rehearsing
you
until
want-
like 3:30 anyway, or so,
Okay.
so
So I just
we're all
wanted
right.
you to be aware of that,
Okay.
depending on when you wanted to be at rehearsal.
Yeah, so, what was that? clean, what did you say?
You're
I'm clean for the 80s?
Clean for the 80s.
Yeah, I just got tired of the long hair and stuff. I don't know, there's no explanation. It just felt good to do. And I knew I wouldn't have long hair 5 years down the line, so I figured I might as well just go ahead and do it.
My wife will let me shave my beard. She's never seen me without a beard.
Oh, no.
And I keep saying, I want to shave this. It's kind of irritating. Because it does. I mean, it gets some
It's a drag sometimes.
hot, smoggy weather. You go, she's like, well, you know too.
Yes, I
And I keep saying, I want to shave it off. And she's never seen it off. She's scared.
She's scared that she'll leave you or something, right?
That's right.
She said, "No, it's this person."
You actually have nothing below here. This is
Yeah.
matted together with knotty dread,
Yeah.
as it were. I wanted to ask you if you mentioned the thing about not really getting recognized.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly not now, since I cut my hair, because people would still think of me with the beard and stuff and the long hair. But even before I did, it was very seldom. It's funny. Even Stevie, who is probably, well, I would say Mick has the most problem, because people are going to look at him anyway because he's so tall, and once they do, they might say, "Oh, yeah."
Stands out in the crowd.
Yes. Even Stevie, I don't think really, people in Los Angeles are very blasé about that sort of thing. And maybe a lot of times we do get recognized by someone who just doesn't betray the recognition. I don't know, but I've never had a problem with that, and I'm very glad. When we go on the road, obviously you take people with you and stuff to make sure everyone's protected. But in Los Angeles, everything's real low-key, and I'm glad.
When you hook up with a band, a lot of people, things started going well, a lot of people crawl the woodwork and say, "Remember me?"
Yes, but not in a bad way. No one crawled out wanting something. It's only you become visible to a large group of people, and suddenly, maybe one of your old friends from grammar school or something's calling you up and saying, "Hey, how's it going?" And that's fun. That's really fun. And people you never ever have a chance to see again in your life, and maybe you'd want to, and you get to because they have a way of contacting you. That hasn't been bad either. No. There's in that way an overall look at invasion of privacy, or what you've been the last couple of questions have been more or less in that direction. I can't say that it's had any effect at all. Anything that I would say is a detriment to my lifestyle at all. No. So we're lucky.
Yeah, everybody seems to have handled this pretty cool. As a band, we're conservative, morally straight, walking the proper path.
Yes. Handled what? Just the success?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've all worked for a number of years, and I think we've all seen some ups and downs leading up to, the success. Mick and John were Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green in England. They were they were like the Beatles for a short period of time over there, where limousines and just screaming girls and stuff. So they've seen that kind of delirium, and then they've seen the real downs, and they've hung on. And so I think, if you've experienced, and we're not kids, none of us are kids either. I'm the youngest in the band, and I'll be 30 in about a week.
Me too.
You too? What day?
The 8th.
On the 3rd.
That's fun.
Yeah. Yes. So
I'll never be 30 again.
sorry about that. But it gives you, if you've experienced some ups and downs leading up to that peak of your career, which we are experiencing now, and we all know that we won't experience it forever as well. I think it gives you a good perspective in dealing with it, and it's you just can't take it too seriously, because the central thing is not your billing. It's not how much money you make. It's not how much fan mail you get or anything like that, or how many magazine covers you're on. It's your work, and you really, when you lose that, forget it. I mean, I would rather be an actor or something who hardly ever gets known, and is known among his peers to be a very good worker and an excellent actor and a great craftsman. You've always got to take your work seriously, and if you're any good, you'll know that you can be better. And if you don't constantly work on your craft, then you're finished, And even when the Fleetwood Mac success goes down, when it starts to ebb off as far as popularity, I will be in there working on that craft, and that's what makes me tick, and that's what makes me really happy, is just knowing that I can do that. And it isn't the size of your billing. That's not important, It's just what you do. And if you separate the difference between what a mass of people see you as, there's probably, I've met hundreds of people who are like stars or famous who are miserable because they present an image to the public at large that they are one thing, and then when it finally gets down to what they really are as people, forget it, right? And if it's more important to be respected among your peers and the people that you actually meet face to face and people that you care about, and that's where it's at. It's your world. It's not that nebulous thing out there, And so I think we all know that.
What's really sad to me is when an entertainer tells me in an interview that they're not really doing what they want to do. If they weren't successful,
Yeah.
right? They just want to. What they really want to do is another kind of music, or.
Well, that's exactly the kind of person I'm talking about, But if they were in something else, they wouldn't like that any better. See, I mean, it's just I think of myself as like a novelist or somebody, or a painter or somebody who would just spend his whole life working on getting better and just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I know that when we're done with this phase of things, which I won't be for quite a while, I hope, that I'll hopefully have enough money saved up to just be able to keep doing it. And that's something good to look forward to as well.
Oh, thank you for letting us check up on this, on the state of your mental health and physical well-being.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we let you go rehearse, so you can get better?
I think you've covered it quite well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.